Imagine having a mind that's just so clear, so independent that it actually changes the feeling in a room. What if your thinking could just cut through all the noise?
Yeah.
Not by shouting louder, but with this kind of quiet truth, almost like a blade through fog. It sounds amazing, but it's achievable. It's about command over your own thought. And there's a path laid out centuries ago by Michel de Montaigne. Now, Montaigne, he wasn't a king or a prophet or anything like that, but his impact, well, you could argue, was huge. He had this unique method. He's just turned inward, studied himself with just relentless honesty and curiosity. And doing that, he totally changed how we think about clarity, reason, the human mind itself.
And that's what we're diving into today. We're not just going to talk about Montaigne. We want to unpack his actual methods, show you how you can train your own mind to achieve that kind of precision. We'll get into his radical approach to self-knowledge and maybe touch on his most profound insight, the one that really gets at the heart of freedom.
So maybe just start by asking yourself this. When was the last time you really looked inward, examined your own thoughts, not just reacted to everything happening around you? Just for context, Montaigne was born in 1533 in France. It was a really chaotic time, religious wars, political upheaval, just a mess. But instead of trying to fix all that external chaos, which, let's face it, seemed impossible, he made this radical choice. He basically retreated to his library in this tower and decided to understand himself. And his essays, these incredibly personal writings, they really became the foundation for modern introspection.
Right. And the questions he asked were, for his time, just revolutionary. Things like, what do I really know? Or why do I actually believe the things I believe? Even, can I trust my own thinking? And the key thing is, he wasn't writing to impress anyone, and not for fame, not to persuade people. He wrote to figure himself out. And in doing that, kind of accidentally, he left us this amazing blueprint for mental clarity.
Okay, so let's break down that blueprint. The first cornerstone, and this is a big one, is something most of us, we resist it. It's embracing doubt. We tend to build our identity around what we're sure of, don't we? I know this, I believe that. Anyway, but Montaigne saw clinging to certainty, especially doing it too soon, as a real obstacle to thinking clearly.
That's precisely it. He famously said something like, I am not certain of anything but the uncertainty of my judgments. He got that if you lock onto an answer too fast, you basically shut the door on deeper understanding. I mean, think about how often we just accept opinions we grew up with or picked up from, the news or our friends without really testing them, or how often we just assume we're right. Montaigne's point is clear thinking starts when you dare to say, actually, I don't know. You have to approach it with a kind of intellectual humility. See ignorance not as a weakness, but as the starting point for clearing away false ideas.
Which leads perfectly into the second key element, radical self-observation. Montaigne wasn't just about abstract ideas. He looked closely at everything about himself, his body, his fears, his little habits, even, like you mentioned, his digestion. Why focus on that seemingly mundane stuff? Because for him, it was real. It was the human condition right there.
Exactly. He lived that idea that every man bears the whole stamp of the human condition. He figured if he could understand himself, his quirks, his weaknesses, his contradictions, he could understand humanity. But, and this is the tricky part, it's uncomfortable. It means looking at the stuff you'd rather ignore. I mean, Montaigne openly wrote about his own laziness, his vanity, his fears, even times he felt coward. He just put it on the page, no excuses. And that raw honesty, that was his power source. So maybe ask yourself, have you ever tried writing about your flaws without immediately trying to explain them away? What might you find?
All right. He saw that clear thinking means you have to become your own experiment. Now turn inward, not judging, but just curious, like a scientist looking at data. And that level of honesty is so rare now, isn't it? Everyone's performing, trying to prove something online or at work. It feels scary, but honestly, it's incredibly freeing when you try it.
Yeah.
Okay, third principle, mental independence. Montaigne read constantly. He loved the classics, but he didn't just blindly accept what they said. He'd quote them, sure, but then he'd question them. Sometimes he'd flat out disagree. His mind was his own. And this feels so relevant today, right? We're drowning in information, but real clarity seems harder to find than ever. Why is that?
It's a huge paradox, isn't it? I think it's because a lot of people aren't really thinking for themselves. They're borrowing beliefs, picking them up from influence, social media bubbles, whatever's trending, without ever really checking, does this actually hold up in variant?
Montaigne's clarity wasn't about knowing everything. It came from this fierce commitment. He'd only believe what passed the test of his own reflection. He'd read something, mull it over, and ask, does this actually ring true for me? Does it match what I've seen and felt?
That's such a key difference. So you have to ask yourself, are my beliefs really mine? Or did I just inherit them, borrow them, absorb them without noticing? If you want that kind of independent clarity, you need to cultivate what he called intellectual solitude. It's not about being alone physically, but creating that mental space where you judge ideas on your own terms, away from the noise and the pressure to conform. And he had this incredibly sharp observation about us, about human minds. He said something like, we are all patchwork, so diverse that each bit Each moment plays its own game. He saw that we're not consistent. We contradict ourselves all the time. We change.
And he didn't fight it. He embraced it. He saw that clear thinking isn't about being perfect or always consistent. It's about being aware of your own contradictions, holding them up, looking at them honestly.
Yeah.
Yep, that's me too.
And it's worth just pausing here. These things we've talked about, embracing doubt, self-observation, mental independence, they aren't just, nice ideas. They are skills. You can train them. They're practical. They're transformative. But they're rare because, well, they require humility. They require quiet time. They definitely require courage.
Okay, so let's pivot now. How does all this apply to us today? To our relationships, our jobs, our identities, the choices we make every day? Because thinking clearly helps us see these invisible chains that often hold us back in our decisions. And honestly, most of those chains, we forge them ourselves in our own mind.
Montaigne really got that. He realized that most of our suffering comes not from the world itself, but from how we interpret it. Think about your own life. How many decisions have you made just out of fear, or said yes when you wanted to say no, just to avoid someone's judgment? Or maybe your thoughts get hijacked by anxiety or impulse or pride instead of clear reason. Montaigne knew that real clarity means stripping away those automatic, unthinking reactions. He saw his mind like a mirror, one he had to constantly polish so it reflected reality accurately. The goal wasn't just to react, but to truly reflect.
And one of his most practical tools for this, really liberating, is grounding clear thinking in attention to the present moment. That was pretty radical back then. Not getting lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, but always coming back to what's right here, right now. He had that amazing quote, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened."
It's so true. Our minds are incredibly good at inventing pain, imagining worst-case scenarios. We waste so much energy worrying about stuff we can't control, and all that mental noise just clouds everything. Montaigne's fix was simple, but power focus on what is. And he did it by asking himself questions constantly. What am I actually feeling right now? What am I thinking this very second? Is this thought really true? Is it helpful? Asking these consistently, it interrupts that storm of automatic thought and brings you back to clarity.
You should really try it next time you feel overwhelmed. Just stop, breathe, ask. Okay, what am I actually reacting to here? Is it fact or is it just a story I'm telling myself?
Yeah.
It's not just philosophy. It's like a practical mind hack. It helps you reclaim your attention from fear and assumption. The more you do it, the clearer things become. Okay, another big one, and this really bumps up against how we think today. Embracing contradiction without shame. We're taught to be consistent, right? Stick to your guns. Changing your mind looks weak. Montaigne would have laughed at that.
Totally. He believed a wise person can hold multiple perspectives at once. He even said something like, I contradict myself very well. I am large. I contain multitude. It's famously linked to Whitman, but the sentiment is pure Montaigne. It's a vital point. We're not static. We learn, we grow, our understanding evolves, so our clarity has to evolve too. It's okay to outgrow opinions. It's okay to realize you were wrong. It's okay to look back and think, wow, I see that differently now. That's not weakness. That's wisdom in action.
And that's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? Clear thinking means you're not trapped by who you used to be. Your ego doesn't need to be right all the time. You can honestly ask, am I holding on to this because it's true or just because it's comfortable? Answering that honest, it changes things. Thoughts become tools, not your identity. And if a tool isn't working anymore, you're free to just put it down.
And this kind of thinking, flexible, present, grounded, it has this quiet power people pick up on. You'll find your words land differently. Your silences mean something. When you speak, it's not just noise, it's clearer. Because in a world that's constantly reacting, constantly repeating narratives, that kind of stillness, that independence, it's magnetic. It's rare. Montaigne's method gives you that edge, not through arrogance, but through deep, humble self-awareness.
So how does this play out in relationships? I mean, so many arguments aren't about the actual issue, are they? They're about interpretations, reactions, unthinking reactions. Imagine in the middle of a fight being able to just pause and ask yourself, okay, wait, what am I really reacting to? Is this about them or did they just poke an old wound in me?
That's exactly the Montaigne approach. He was convinced the most dangerous thing in any interaction is the unexamined self. If we don't know ourselves, we just project our own stuff onto others. We blame them. We hurt them, often without meaning to, because we haven't faced our own pain. He said, there is no desire more natural than the desire for knowledge. But then he added the crucial bit, that knowledge must begin at home. Which makes you wonder, right? How often do we try so hard to understand everyone else, but never really stop to understand ourselves?
And what about our goals? our ambitions, our habit. Think about how many of those might be driven by things we're not even aware of, trying to prove something, trying to escape something, trying to be someone we're not.
Montaigne's clarity let him see through that. He wasn't pretending he didn't feel ambition or vanity. He admitted he did, but he looked at those impulses honestly, and then he could choose what actually mattered. Imagine living like that, where your goals come from real clarity at who you are, not from comparing yourself or feeling afraid. So maybe ask yourself, am I chasing what truly matters to me, or just what looks good to others?
And this is where it can get. When you start thinking this clearly, some things just fall away. Old goals that weren't real, toxic habits, shallow ambitions, and that authenticity can sometimes unsettle people around you. Because when you stop being easily manipulated by appearances, you become, harder to control. That's the quiet power mantra. And it's definitely something you can tap into. Let's go even deeper now into identity itself and how this helps us face uncertainty without freaking out. Montaigne would push you to question your self-image, whether you think you're smart, strong, kind, or maybe broken, uncertain, whatever it is, you'd say scrutinize it. Because identity, if you don't examine it, just becomes a mask. And masks always distort how you see yourself and others.
Yeah, his genius partly came from admitting ignorance, not as a trick, but as this radical act of freedom. He said something profound. We are all richer than we think, but we are taught to borrow instead of to draw from our own fund. Just sit with that. You have this wealth inside you, thoughts, insights, potential, but we're trained to borrow everything, standards, belief, meaning from outside. And the result, a world full of people who might look awake but are kind of sleepwalking through borrowed lives.
So Montaigne is basically saying, wake up, and the first step, detach your thinking from your identity. You are not your opinions. You are not your past failures. You are not your moods. You are the awareness behind them, the one who notices. That observing self, that's where clarity starts. Okay, let's touch on something Montaigne tackled head on, death. Why was that so important for him? Because he really believed that only by facing death can we learn how to truly live. Not in a morbid way, but it sharpens everything, makes you see what matters.
Exactly. That famous line, to study philosophy is to learn how to die. What did he mean? He meant training the mind to let go of its desperate need for security, for permanence, because, it's an illusion. Spends so much energy running failure from end. Montaigne looked right at death and saw it not as an enemy.
And when you really start to accept impermanence, two amazing things happen. First, your priorities snap into focus. You stop wasting time on trivial stuff, on appearances. You start asking what really matters right now while I'm here. Second, this strange kind of freedom bubbles up. If nothing's guaranteed, if it all ends, then why not be fully authentically yourself while you can? It's not depressing. It's a call to live without the heavy baggage. So think about it. If you weren't afraid of being misunderstood, what would you say? If you weren't afraid of failing, what would you try? If you stopped clinging to who you think you should be, who might you actually become? These aren't just philosophical games. They're path to being more free, and Montaigne explored them constantly through reflection and crucially through writing. Which brings us to writing as a mirror. He didn't write to impress. He wrote to see himself, to adjust his own ideas, to sharpen his thoughts by trying to put them into words. Writing was his way of digging under mental noise.
There's something really powerful about writing just for yourself. It forces clarity, doesn't it? It makes you organize the chaos in your head. It slows things down. You see the pattern. You understand what's really going on under the surface chatter. If you haven't tried it, just start small. 1 paragraph a day. Not about your to-do list, but what you're actually thinking, feeling, maybe fearing. Then read it back. It's surprising what you learn.
In this age of constant noise and stimulation, writing like that feels almost like an act of rebellion. It's like saying, hold on, world, I need to listen to myself first. And that quiet internal rebellion, that's what makes your thinking magnetic. People might not know why, but they sense something different. A depth, a stillness. They feel you're not just repeating talking points, you're speaking from somewhere real.
That's exactly what Montaigne showed us. It's not about having a mind stuffed with facts, but a mind cleared of illusion, not needing to be right, but being unafraid to be wrong. It requires what he called naked, this mental vulnerability where nothing is off limits, not even your most cherished.
So the question is, are you up for that? Because thinking with this kind of clarity, this honesty, you might lose things. Maybe some admiration from people who preferred the old you. Maybe the comfort of fitting in easily. Definitely the illusion of certainty. But what you gain, it's immense peace, presence, precision in your thoughts, the power to choose your thoughts, not be ruled by them, the quiet strength to stand on your own, aligned with yourself, and ultimately, the clarity of truth.
Which brings us to maybe Montaigne's deepest insight, the one woven through everything he wrote, the reason maybe why so many people struggle to find peace. It's not what you'd expect. It challenges almost everything we're taught. He basically concluded there is no final answer. And that realization, paradoxically, is the answer. Think about it. We spend our lives chasing certainty, right? We want conclusions, labels, fixed beliefs to hold on to, something to protect us from the chaos, the fear, the unknown.
Exactly. But Montaigne saw that very need for certainty as the biggest enemy of clear thinking. That famous question he kept asking, qu'est-ce que j'ai? What do I know? It wasn't despair. It was the engine of his freedom. It was how he dismantled illusions.
He saw that life isn't neat. It's not black and white, good or bad, right or wrong. It's fluid, it's nuanced, it's always changing. And when you truly accept that fluidity, something amazing happens. You stop needing to control everything. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop fighting reality. And then you start seeing things as they are, not through the filter of your hopes or fears, but just clearly, with presence.
So clear thinking isn't about getting more data. It's about removing the distortion. And those distortions often come from wanting to feel safe or superior or certain. Real clarity takes courage, the courage to sit with paradox, the courage to say, I don't know, and keep looking anyway. That's why he wrote essays, right? The word means attempts, exploration. New thought was alive, not fixed. You don't need all the answers to live wisely. You just need better questions.
So practically speaking, how do you start asking yourself, what assumptions am I making right now without even realizing? What belief am I maybe afraid to question? Where am I pretending I know something just so I don't feel vulnerable? Those kinds of questions, asked honestly, they start dissolving the fog. Clarity is what's left.
And bring it right into your daily, difficult conversation. Ask, am I really listening right now or just waiting to make my point? Am I defending my story?
Feeling overwhelmed, ask, okay, what's actually happening and what drama am I adding on top of it? Setting goals. Ask, does this come from my real truth, or is it driven by some fear? This is clarity in action. It's powerful, not because it makes you bulletproof, but because it makes you honest.
And the people who have this clarity, the ones who might quietly inspire or even unnerve others, they're often not the loudest ones. They're often quiet because they don't need to prove anything anymore. They've seen through the game. They've looked inward and come back with something real. That kind of grounded presence just changes everything around. It changes how you talk to people, how you handle stressful situations, how you love. Because when you don't desperately need others to validate you, you can actually love them for who they are, not who you need them to be. When you don't need to win every argument, you start seeing the pain behind people's defenses. And when you stop trying to force life into your neat little boxes, you start trusting its flow and your place in it.
And this is maybe Montaigne's deepest gift. The clearer you think, the gentler you become. Less reactive, less rigid, less judgment. Not because you've given up, but because your sense of worth isn't tied to outcomes anymore. That's the final shift. When the mind stops defending, stops posturing, stops hiding, it gets quiet. And in that quiet, intuition wakes up. Insight sharpens. Wisdom speaks. Not the ego's voice, but something true and clear.
So you might be thinking, is this actually possible? Or just a nice idea? The answer is yes, it's absolutely possible. But it's not easy. It takes a commitment. It takes carving out moments of quiet. It takes being willing to just watch your own mind without immediately judging or running away. You don't need a literal tower like Montaigne. You just need to pause, maybe write things down, reflect, ask yourself daily, am I seeing clearly or am I seeing what I want to see?
And if you keep asking those questions, you will change. Because when you start thinking with that kind of clarity, the world responds differently. Opportunities show up not by magic, but because you see them. Relationships shift because you shift. Inner peace grows not because life gets easy, but because illusion loses its power. This isn't just dusty philosophy. It's for your life right now. It's not about being admired. It's about being awake. And that's Montaigne's discovery. The mind, cleared of distortion and fear, becomes your greatest tool, yes, but also your deepest sanctuary. A place where fear fades, truth emerges, and you finally feel at home with yourself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we'll leave you with one last question. Not for a quick answer, but something to really carry with you, to ponder. What might your life become if your mind were no longer your enemy, or even just a noisy roommate, but your clearest, most trusted ally? Think about it, because the clearer you think, the freer you become. And that freedom, deep, authentic freedom, that's what really stands out, because it's real, and real is rare.